Hey family, thank you for tuning into Our Roots podcast with Joseph Baba Ifa. We're only the strongest roots, see the light, brought to you by Botanica Candles and more. And if you haven't had the opportunity, tap that like button and hit that subscribe button. What's up, Phil?
Yes, that's right. Please hit that subscribe button. Let's add to our already monumental 100,000 subscribers.
I tell you, I still get shook by that thing. I'll see it in the camera and he's
It's glistening.
He's right there. We got to give him a name at some point.
Hubert.
I don't think so. I will not have a Hubie.
Fine. Fine. We'll ask the
We'll
audience.
vote. Let's guys, definitely we'll make a poll or put in the comments, what do you want us to name the silver button? Because in reality, it's y'all's. It just lives at our house. That's really what's going on, Debo style.
That's right. And guys, don't forget to join our membership program if you want some more access. There's a little button right on this video. It says join. You can have three different choices for 3 different tiers, all each offering its own perks. So what are we talking about today, bro?
Awesome, brother. So we're going to be continuing with our Meji series, entering in at number 5 with Baba Irosun Meji. So like with all the other Mejis, you know, they're chock full of information, a bunch to talk about, but I always like to start from the very beginning, right? So there's a story here, and usually with the Mejis, it begins with their celestial acts, right? Like what they did in heaven before they came down. So it was time after 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗶𝗍 Meji and his brothers had left, Baba Irosun Meji was up next. And he went for divination with his celestial awos, or priests, and Ifa identified with his own Odu that he needed to perform sacrifice to Eshu, right? And when he did this, Eshu revealed to him that the deity of misfortune, known as 𝗍𝗏𝗍, was going to try to avoid him being able to fulfill his destiny and descend from heaven to earth. But fret not, Eshu was going to distract him. But at that very moment, Irosun Meji had to start running to what's known as the needle hole that separates earth and heaven. And he did. And with the sacrifice, Eshu threw the rooster in a place where 𝗍𝗏𝗍 was going to notice, and 𝗍𝗏𝗍 started devouring it. And with that, you know, Irosun Meji was able to, you know, eat up a lot of track. But at a key moment, you know, after finishing the rooster, 𝗍𝗏𝗍 was like, all right, where's Irosun Meji? And Eshu was like, I don't know. And when he looked, he saw that he was getting closer to the border. So 𝗍𝗏𝗍 is really characterized, being that it's about misfortune, for being very fast. And that's why things in life can turn from great to bad really quickly. And basically it caught up, and right when Irosun Meji jumped from heaven to earth, 𝗍𝗏𝗍 had very long nails, the scripture says, and it went like this, trying to grab him, right? And all he was able to do with his fingernail was cut him down what is now known as the spinal column. So when Irosun Meji arrived on earth and was born, he was the first human being to have the indent that all of us do as human beings on our back from the curvature of the spine. And it was a mark that he came cursed from heaven to earth by 𝗍𝗏𝗍. So when he was born, he immediately had to perform sacrifices and homage, even to 𝗍𝗏𝗍 itself, so that it wouldn't try to fulfill the act in heaven on earth. And when it was done, 𝗍𝗏𝗍 said, you know, I'll always be around, but it won't be to the point where I eliminate you. You know, at this point, you made it. It's a reiteration of human fortitude, but misfortune, along with death, will always be present. So we have to be taken into account for as well. And till this day, we do. When we talk about this deity or energy, because I can't necessarily call it Orisha, of 𝗍𝗏𝗍, it's found in the Odu Baba Irosun Meji, Ogunadadura, as well as the Odu Obedi as well. These are all various Odus that talk about ways to appease it, being that we're all going to deal with her at one point or another. But if we look at this Odu, it really speaks or makes you know, commemoration of basically humanity's fortitude to want to live. A lot of people don't take into account how difficult it is not only to create a life physically, but then to, you know, prepare a soul and a destiny to go from heaven to earth. You know, some people are dealing with struggles karmically even before they're born. And Irosun Meji was able to overcome that in heaven, even so with performing sacrifice via Ifa and Eshu, right? But I always thought that was a really interesting pataki because it explains why we have that curvature or indentation in the spinal area, because that's where 𝗀𝗏𝗍 dug his nail in and scooped out all that flesh trying to catch Irosun Meji before he escaped heaven.
That's super interesting.
Yeah, so that's a pretty gangster story. But huge fan of it. I remember when I first read it, I was like, oh man, I know this one's going to be enjoyable. But Irosun Meji very quickly on Earth became a very well-known Babalawo. He was very sought after. He was very proficient. To the point, segueing into the next pataki, where he was invited to a land that was in need of a king, right? Now, the interesting thing about it is beforehand, 15 other men had come and failed. And they called on 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗲 to go and lead them, right? So what ended up happening was, divination was performed. Baba Irosun Meji was revealed, where Ifa told him once again to perform sacrifice to Eshu. And when he did, Eshu explained to him how he was going to maneuver in a way where he wasn't going to suffer the same fate as the kings before him. And the piece of advice that Eshu gave him was, don't be the first guy to walk in a room. So it's like the mob, you walk in a room, you don't walk out. Mm-hmm. So he arrived. Everything seemed pretty normal. The people seemed pretty nice. He was introduced to the council, basically of 16 men that were supposed to attend to him and help him fulfill his function, but he kind of got a bad feeling from them. So they said, well, we're going to lead you into the room where we're going to crown you and fulfill all of the obligations to make you king. And he said, all right, but being that I'm going to be king, you guys walk in first. And they were like, no, your majesty, we could never do that. You should be the one to grace the room first. He said, well, if I am your majesty, I'm ordering you guys to go in first. And then, out of nowhere, with the door open and it was pretty dark inside, a dog walked into the room and fell in a hole that was full of spikes. So basically, the reason all these other kings had died and weren't able to survive was because the council was killing them all with this trap door. That's why Irosun Meji is known as the Ifa of the holes, right? And when 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗲 saw this and he looked at the council, he said, is this what you guys do? And they were all really shook because no one had ever thought about that, because the other gentlemen were really egotistical. And they're like, yeah, I'm the first one to walk in. I'm the king. He was the first one to have the humility, enough humility to be able to survive. So 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗲 immediately had them executed, right? And some people say he even crowned himself or he hired another council, what have you. But when he was able to reveal the corruption, he was able to install himself as king of that land. And he always thanked Eshu and Ifa for helping him or making it possible for him to be able to protect his life, right? So this Odu, when we talk about Baba Irosun Meji, speaks of the importance of patience, not rushing through things, not allowing ourselves to think we are who we think we are or what people tell us we are, always knowing our true identity and maintaining humility, and never be the first one to walk into a room because you might not walk out of it, Another thing is this Odu speaks very positively of dogs. For anyone that, is interested in having a canine here, it would be very ideal because the dog actually saved Irosun Meji's life, right? So next story, there's another version of the one beforehand where, it was where 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗲 was invited to become king of said land, but in a test of his valor, they wanted to see him survive, basically being dropped into a cave full of wild animals. I mean, there's a similar story in the Bible, actually. I forgot who it was, where the guy got dropped into the lion's den and made it out alive. I don't remember the character.
Oh, jeez.
But when they dropped him in, they didn't realize that he had already performed 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗲. And once again, Eshu was there, and Eshu, based on the sacrifice he received, went into the cave and actually influenced the animals to not attack Irosun Meji. And actually what they did was they carried him out of the hole. So when people saw this, they immediately hit the ground, homage, all these other things. Once again, he had the council executed because he knew it was a trap. And he was able to establish himself as king of that land and live a very long life. So this Odu says, once again, everything is preparation. When we're talking about Ifa and, life goals and things that we need to be prepared for, every moment of life is precious and we don't always get opportunities again. So this Odu is a reiteration that we always need to consult Ifa or be prepared for situations before we delve into them, especially from a professional standpoint, especially when there's people that depend on all the prosperity that we bring to our house, right? So this Odu, when we look at it as well, it speaks of the relationship with animals. It speaks of the dog again, because they say that Eshu was in the form of a dog when he spoke to, the lions and tigers and bears. It speaks of the importance of having the support from Orisha to be able to survive any situation, even though it seems, pretty terminal at the moment. So this Odu also has patakis that talk about relationships. Another story that's here speaks of one of the first times we actually see Oshun and Shango in a relationship together. And both of them went for divination, separate times, separate places per se. And the Odu of Baba Irosun Meji was revealed, where Ifa told each of them to perform sacrifice. Oshun was going to perform sacrifice and thus take it to the ocean. Shango lived at the ocean. He was actually a fisherman, but he was told to leave his 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗏 where he lived as well. So each of them left the Babalawo's house at separate times and arrived actually pretty simultaneously at the beach. And they started talking. They noticed each other. They found each other interesting, and basically they started realizing they might be able to help each other, because Shango had this amazing product but really wasn't good at marketing. Oshun, who was actually looking for love, but apart from that had a lot of financial preparation,
Okay.
kind of proposed the idea: you get the fish, I'll sell it, you know how to cook it, and we'll start a business right here on the beach and we'll live here. And this was really amazing. So they actually started, and they killed it, and they stayed together and had that, establishment until they passed away. And it led to a really beautiful life. So if you look at this Odu of Baba Irosun Meji, it actually challenges a huge concept that we have within Ifa and Orisha. Because a lot of people say, based on Odus like 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗏 or 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗏, the children of Shango and Oshun shouldn't interact at all. They shouldn't have relationships. They shouldn't initiate each other, a bunch of things. But this is why I say you can't take one sign and interpret it to the whole religion, especially on a topic like this, because Irosun Meji is a perfect example of a happily ever after between these two energies.
Yeah.
If you look at the other ones, it ended horribly. In 𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗏, Ochun aborted Chango's child, pretty horrible. In 𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗏, they domestically abused each other. But in Irosun Meji, which was a sign that was around before those many times over, they were perfectly happy. So Ifa says in this Odu that, there are instances where these Orishas, just like other Orishas that are commonly put at odds, can interact positively. We just have to look at a Odu. Like, for example, me being a priest of Oshun, if I wasn't a Babalawo and I was still crowning people, and this was my Odu, I'd definitely crown Shangos, and vice versa. That's why if you look, a lot of the older Orishas did this no problem. But you always have to base yourself off of the information rather than just what's commonplace, because that's always going to give the best results. But definitely a beautiful story and a testament to their relationship, because to be frank with you, who Shango was happiest with was with Oshun. She was the greatest caretaker, homemaker, not to take anything away from the other ones, such as 𝗃𝗏𝗏, who was a fabulous woman as well. But Shango found a real balance of, stability as well as excitement with Oshun. But he had a very toxic relationship passionately with Oya, and he would always go back to Oya and break Oshun's heart. But that didn't happen here, but usually it did, right? So with Baba Irosun Meji, there's another pataki in this story that speaks of Oshun's hair, right? This is one of the Odus that people utilize to be able to substantiate not cutting people's hair during the Orisha ceremony. And this is something I'm vehemently against. Based on what this Odu says, and based also on what Baba Otura Meji says, in my opinion, you got to go bald if you want to initiate Ifa, Orisha, etc. The hair has no place. And when we get to Otura Meji, I'll save that pataki for then. But the one I'm going to touch on now is from this Odu. And in this sign, it speaks of when, there's a couple different versions, but basically what happened was Oshun fell on hard times, right? And because of it, she had to take on a profession that wasn't flattering. I mean, you guys can interpret whatever you like. But it was to the point that the other Orishas saw fit, especially her sister Yemaya, to relinquish her children from her, and take them into custody. Kind of like a DCF situation. And this made Oshun lose her mind. Complete depression, instability, manic episode, etc. And she actually, some versions say cut off her hair, and other versions said the hair started falling out. where Oshun ultimately was left without hair.
Okay.
And, people saw the state she was in and what was occurring. And they say that 𝗃𝗵𝗃𝗃 herself actually manufactured the wig in this Odu, right? And when Oshun put it on, she started reestablishing herself mentally, getting treatment, speaking, getting reorganized with her life to the point where she was able to have her children back. So some people hear this story and they think that, well, when Oshun lost her hair or cut her hair, she lost her mind. So the daughters of Oshun and sons of Oshun don't have to cut their hair during Orisha. Well, once again, this is really a stretch from an interpretive standpoint, because if you notice, when she lost her hair, it had nothing to do with any ceremonial process whatsoever. We have to understand that there are case-by-case cases, or instances within Ifa, but for the most part, things are standardized from an initiatory standpoint. So usually it's referring to things outside of initiation. For example, that sister, that brother that has Irosun Meji initiating into Oshun, or any Orisha that cuts their hair, and this Odu says something like this, it's just saying after that, don't cut it too much. If anything, trim the tips. Like, you're meant to have long hair in this Odu because that's where your blessing is going to come from. But really, the hair was minutia compared to Oshun's lifestyle. She was a little unorganized. She liked to party. She was a little negligent, all of these different things. And that's what led to her losing her kids, which was really the point in her life that was most low. Oshun was not a bad mother, by the way. In this sign, it speaks of when Oshun went through the rehabilitation process to get her kids back. I mean, all parents make mistakes, right? But the real mistake is allowing a mistake to persist. If she really didn't care about her kids, she wouldn't have taken all that effort to get right and create a home for them once more. So our personal opinion, humbly, if you're crowning Orisha or doing Ifa, the hair's got to go. So you have to be mentally prepared for that, because with interpretations like this, or even the one beforehand with Oshun and Shango, we can greatly alter people's destinies for no reason at all.
Do women have issues with that?
Bro, yeah. And I tell you, this is why it's so important to follow that protocol, because, like, at the end of the day, we are descendants of Africa. Lukumi is descendant of 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏, ultimately. Whatever clan it is, whatever area it is, however you want to interpret it, at the end of the day, we descend from that, right? And certain things have changed or been modified. And for the most part, they're positive. But this is one of those things we really can't play with, because what occurs is, and some people are looking for legitimacy, some people are not, but it's a respect thing. So when, the random 𝗃𝗶𝗏𝗏 over there sees, okay, this person just initiated into Orisha but has a full head of hair, they're perplexed. And with perplexion can come misunderstanding, which can come doubt and ultimately, distrust, because they'll look at us and be like, well, what are you guys doing over there? This whole concept, and I won't even say certain words because I don't want to help people visualize what goes through the ceremony, but it's not that if you don't cut all your hair, you don't have Orisha done. But it takes longer to work. At the end of the day, what happens regardless, but it takes longer to work. So, for example, when you get a tattoo, what do?
They put this stuff on it.
They shave you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They shave you, because what does the hair do? It can cause infection, right?
Yep.
And when you're about to have a surgical process, what do? They shave you. So if Orisha and, Ifa are spiritual brain surgery, why are we allowing the hair to still be there? Regardless of what an Odu says. So, our personal opinion, and, it's really key. But you have some people that, and this was Ochung's problem here, she was a little vain. Orisha is not a space for vanity. Ifa is not a space for vanity. So if you're coming into this process and you can't even cut your hair, it's because you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Because at the end of the day, when I did Orisha or I did Ifa, I'll never forget, the night before, when I've gone through all these previous ceremonies and I feel like just croaking, I'm like, nothing is going to stop me from accomplishing this goal. I don't care if I die. I said that before I went into the room of Ifa as well. I don't care if I have to fight all 16 of these guys. And if you're not going in with that mentality, you're going in with the wrong mentality. I'm not saying you got to fight somebody, but whatever that's asked of you, whatever you need to do to accomplish and fulfill your destiny, why would you even hesitate about it? So, but you have some people that really aren't there for the essence of the process, because whoever doesn't do that is missing a huge part of the process and learning curve, regardless of your job. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, cut all your hair off and wear a wig like Ochun did. In reality, what this Odu is saying is that, if you have a work situation where you're unable to be bald at work, wear a wig, because that's what Ochun did, because in some versions she did Orisha, right? And the yaoraje was very difficult for her, and she put on the wig, and that helped her assimilate a little better. But she still had to, shave her hair. So in this case, like, you'll see some people not shave their hair, for professional reasons or whatever. At the end of the day, yeah, you have orisha done, but you're not going to get your respect, and people are going to talk about you when you leave. And it's just one of those things. If we want legitimacy in the eyes of our ancestors or our brothers, there's certain things we really can't, debate about, or we really can't augment, and there's nothing that could be revealed in an ita orisha that would, justify this. The orisha is not going to say, yeah, you didn't have to cut your hair for work. By no means. Orisha has no time for those conversations because they left all this information to us. So, personal, humble opinion. But in our house, everybody's going through the, what is the cream? The nair process.
Yeah.
That thing it's going to be spotless. So, but very key point there. Baba Irosun Meji, really incredible Odu. I mean, some people would say that this Odu is actually the one that carries all of the knowledge of Ifa in their head. Some people say that the head of Irosun Meji actually represents the tray of Ifa. It was the person who would actually carry the tray of Ifa to Orunmila to be able to, perform his functions and perform his Ifa work. So, it's a pretty epic Odu in that regard. But Baba Irosun Meji has a pataki that speaks of a woman, where the woman went to visit the Babalawo because she wanted to become prosperous in commerce, money and things like that. And divination was performed, where Ifa told her to perform sacrifice with 𝗃𝗀𝗹𝗁 through the Odu of Baba Irosun Meji. This is one of the Odus why the 𝗃𝗀𝗹 goes in the ebo, which is the white cornmeal substance that, goes in the middle. And ironically, this woman was a master maker of 𝗃𝗀𝗹, right? And when she did that, unbeknownst to the Babalawos, her business popped off. Right? She started doing incredibly well. And she never went back to the Babalawo to pay him because he actually did the work on consignment. He did it off the strength for her because she had a lot of needs. So one day, the Babalawo is walking by, or Rumila is walking by the stand, or sees the woman and just says hi. And she was like, oh, I don't have your money. How dare you ask me for your money, for my money? And he was like, ma'am, I didn't ask you for the money. I didn't mention your situation at all. I'm just trying to say hello. It's been some time since I've seen you. She's like, no, the hell with you. She completely ripped Orula to shreds. And 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 saw this. The big guy here is 𝗃𝗏𝗹. Big, the really, I mean, Yemaya's big, Olokun's big, Obadala's big here. Pero when it comes to Irosun Meji, 𝘃𝗶𝗱 can't be overstated. So what ended up happening was 𝘃𝗶𝗱 seeing this and her being unappreciative and not paying Orula back or the Babalawos, he actually destroyed her business. He caused all of the 𝗃𝗀𝗹s when the person went to eat it to turn rotten at that moment.
Jeez.
So just like that, I don't know, you can think of like a food poisoning scare at one of these major chains. Her business went to hell. So at that point, she goes running back to Orula. And he does divination again, and Baba Irosun Meji comes out, where Ifa said that she needed to pay double she did the first time to be able to get the same results. And she did, and at that point, she apologized, she revealed herself, what she had done, all these different things. And Orunmila said, I'd never besmirch anybody by telling them they owe me money. That would lower my prestige. But, humility and appreciation is really the memory of the heart, and from that day forward, she thanked Ifa. She was, on point with Ifa. She would fulfill with Orula, and her business did very well because she had a lot of culinary gifts. So this Odu speaks of the importance of appreciating the Babalawo, right? And that's not just me saying it or me or for my brothers or what have you, but it is one of the most thankless jobs that exists. And you got to imagine, I mean, a doctor will save somebody's life and not get a thank you. A police officer will do the same, not get a thank you. But at least what they do is tangible to a certain degree. When you look at somebody in our profession, I mean, everybody's always looking for a reason not to pay us or not to recognize what we do.
Right.
Some people, I've literally prescribed things for people and they've paid for it. And we haven't even done the work yet and they resolve the issue. And some people are like, yeah, I'd like a refund now. But, obviously we're non-refundable at the store.
It doesn't work that way.
But, they don't take a moment sometimes to rationalize, yo, I didn't even do the stuff yet. I just passed him, just paid for my services, and I already resolved my issue. Imagine what's going to happen when, we really, get to work. But this Odu speaks of that, where this was one of the first times where 𝗏𝗲𝗏 and his practice were undermined and deceived, because he would do work for free sometimes. And that's why the 𝗏𝗏𝗹𝗁, other than specific cases, very specific cases, shouldn't do Ifa work for free, because it speaks of when people would have the money to pay for things and just didn't want to, or they would get the things done and be unappreciative to the point of insulting Ifa. And to avoid that entirely, that's why one of the taboos in this sign is that, right? But in this Odu, it also states why Eshu is 𝗏𝗏𝗏 and the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏's bodyguard. At the end of the day, I always recommend that if you don't have money to do a bowl set aside, it's better not to get red. Because all we're going to do is remind you of your problems, and then you're not going to have a solution. It might actually go worse for you.
Oh.
And then apart from that, when the person doesn't follow the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏's, recommendations, or, undermines the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, all these different things, Eshu punishes the person. Kind of like he did here. Because if you notice, as soon as she started with the nonsense, Eshu was like, okay, Orula's a nice guy. He's not going to do it, but I'm not a nice guy, and I'm going to do it. And he rotted out her whole inventory. She lost everything. So it speaks of the importance of understanding the role that Eshu plays from a consultation or, even esoteric standpoint within the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏's practice.
Yeah, no, that's a good story. True.
Yeah, and it's not just us. It's every profession. I mean, like, I mean, it's like, with the 100K thing, man, I don't know. I was brought up in a way and understood things in a way where you have to pay homage. You give flowers now so people can smell them, because when they're dead, I mean, they're just laying on a tombstone. But, like the role you played with the 100K, or, anybody that taught me Ifa, or, there's no shame in giving people homage and thanking them. You know what I'm saying? And having that appreciation. And this Odu, I think, really could serve a great lesson, because in this time period that we're living in, no one wants to have a teacher. No one wants to have a mentor. People don't even want people to initiate them. They want to initiate themselves. Everything they want to do is toxically independent. And in reality, no one ever accomplished anything on their own.
Now, I want to refer to the other video. If you have not seen that video, it was all about self-initiation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And how erroneous it is. Like, there's nothing. I mean, that's like giving birth to yourself. I mean, there's even scripture that says Olodumare had parents. So I don't know how deep the rabbit hole goes. But it's telling you, like, hey, you need somebody. And appreciation is great. And, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 wasn't even trying to insult the woman or call her out. He was just saying hi. But her own anxiety, her own guilt caused her to fall out of 𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗍, or good character and conduct, and Eshu wreaked havoc on her, right? So it speaks of that. In this Odu of Baba Irosun Meji, it speaks of a story where Obatala wanted to test the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏s, right? And he had his servants and whatnot put out the false rumor that he had died, right?
On purpose.
On purpose. He faked his own death, right?
Okay.
'Cause he wanted to see who really knew what they were talking about, who's who, what's what. So there's two versions. There's one where Obatala acted dead in his bed, and then there's another version where he was hiding under the bed and there was a fake body on the bed, right?
Okay.
So when all of the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏s went, including myself, 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏𝗏 failed. And they were like, where's Obatala? What inheritance did he leave? This, that, and the third. Because they were starting to notice negativity in the village because no one could really, resolve the issue. They didn't know what was going on. So all the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏s failed, except for Baba Irosun Meji. And what happened was he did divination, which no one else did because they thought they knew everything. And his own Odu was revealed, where Ifa told him to perform sacrifice. And apart from that, to perform an offering to under Obatala's bed, right? Well, when he went in and everybody was looking at him obnoxiously, like, this guy's not going to be able to get it, he actually went to give the offering under the bed, and he found Obatala. And, the story seems kind of trivial now, but back then, somebody faking their death and whatnot was completely unheard of. And when Obatala realized that Irosun Meji had revealed what had happened, and the offering, they say, was of bananas. When he saw that, he said, wow, you really are a diviner, and he made Irosun Meji his personal 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. But if you interpret Ifa in this Odu, you know, it speaks once again of where the Babalawos are being tested, their characters being tested, all of these different things to kind of see, you know, who's who and what's what. So it speaks of the importance of study. It speaks of the importance of preparation, and really being obedient to Ifa, because sometimes, you know, even we as Babalawos, spiritual professionals, human beings in general, arrogance is something that we have to constantly be battling or avoiding so that we don't go through embarrassment, because the other Babalawos were embarrassed because they couldn't really, you know, stay, you know, fundamental and start from the simplest things to the more complicated things. You know, they wanted to look in the attic. They wanted to go to another country. They wanted all these other things, and he was right under the bed the whole time. So this Odu is kind of a reiteration of your solutions are closer than you think. And, you know, the less you complicate things, the more quickly we can get to a solution. So Irosun Meji really became the head Babalawo because of his practicality, because of his humility. So interesting stuff there.
Yeah.
Baba Irosun Meji also has a story that speaks of, you know, it's kind of sad, I mean, until the end. It speaks of a story where the city of Ife basically had shut down, where people had died, or it was kind of laid in ruin. It's like this epic tale where the Babalawos came back after leaving. You know, there might have been an epidemic or a war that left the city desolate. And, you know, they were trying to kind of regroup and whatnot to reestablish the land and, you know, begin the spiritual processes again to bring prosperity and love and, you know, progress back to, you know, their spiritual epicenter. And the big issue is no one knew how to attend to the staff of Osun anymore. And when we talk about Osun or Opa Osun, the metal rooster, but the one that it's really referring to in this Odu is the one that the Babalawos utilize, which is the tall staff made out of iron. So when they went, they called upon Irosun Meji because they had heard that he still had the knowledge, right? Being that Irosun Meji makes reference to Osun, right? Ro Osun means Osun revealed himself or was made visible, right? Mm-hmm. So when they went and they called him and he got there, he started doing the invocations. He started, you know, basically because that was his specialty, was that staff. And one of the things he did, which is really indicative, is he actually started taking the staff and doing the invocations and banging it on the floor, thus waking up all the spiritualities of the dead that, you know, basically were laid to rest there. They say in this epic thing, like the gates of Ife opened up, and, you know, Ōbatālā and Olodumare and a lot of the elder Orishas and stuff were there waiting to kind of be called back to bring that energy back in. And they recognized Irosun Meji basically as the savior of, you know, Ife, right? Just based on his knowledge of Osun, where that kind of became his central occupancy. That was his focus, apart from leading Ifa ceremonies and all of the other things that come with that. So it's a really beautiful story there. But Irosun Meji is an Odu that, you know, it's very epic in that regard. It speaks about transitions. It speaks about, you know, basically scaling or being promoted to positions as well. The person is going to be as successful as they prepare themselves for. Like if you look, the lady knew how to cook. She was an excellent cook and had great things happen to her. Irosun Meji studied Ifa, and because of it, he was very blessed, and, you know, things went well for him. So it's an Odu that says we're going to reap what we sow, and we're going to get out as much as we put in. Time and time again, story over and over. There's a story here about the Orisha Olokun that's pretty key as well. Because when we look at one of the proverbs in this Odu, it says, no one knows what's at the bottom of the ocean, right? And there's another proverb that says, someone is capable of taking out another person's eyes so that, or someone, how do I put this? It sounds so much better in Spanish. It says, it's pretty horrible. It says, I'll rip my own eyes out to see another blind person, or something to that regard, right? Oh. Where it's really counterproductive, like, you know, or I'll poke my eyes out to, you know, see another blind person, you know what I'm saying? So it's really, what it's making reference to is by hurting others, we're not helping ourselves. And what the story's saying in another version of the proverb is, you know, in the land of the blind, the person with impaired vision is king, you know, because at the end of the day, it's better than being blind. But neither here nor there. it speaks of the Orisha Olokun. And Olokun had two sons. That's why it's known as Irosun Meji, the two brothers. And one of them was the preferred brother. Not that Olokun preferred him just because he loved him more, but that son was very attentive of Olokun. He was obedient. He was brilliant. You know, he really exemplified all that Olokun wanted in a son based on his behavior, not on predisposition. And then the other brother, instead of trying to get motivated and you know, do things for himself and learn and grow, all he did was spend all day hating on the other brother. So Olokun recognized this, and he still loved the other son, but he's like, I can't really, you know, I don't know where to find that common ground with you because you're always trying to plan your brother's demise, right?
Yeah.
So it got to the point where the jealous brother, who actually had a vision impairment in one of his eyes, decided he wanted to make himself more attractive to his father than his brother. And what he did was one day he ripped out his eyes, right? And he threw them away. And immediately when Olokun realized this, he said, you know, what do I do here? And he called in the brothers and he saw what happened. He said, why did you do this to your brother? And he said, well, you know, I always noticed that you paid more attention to him and you loved him more. And Olokun said, it wasn't that. It's just that you don't do what you're told. You know, you're not really obedient. You don't really have good character. So it's not that I loved him more. It's just that we would interact more because he was more delightful to interact with, to be frank with you. And now you've taken his eyes out in an act of jealousy. And he said, well, now you can love me more because at least I can see. And he said, I won't love you more, but you will do more for your brother because now he's your responsibility. So you have to be with him all the time and you have to do whatever he asks of you because you have a blood debt with him now, right? That's why the Odu said one was born right, one was born wrong, because it says that the other brother had issues and character flaws that really were irreparable. So if we interpret Ifa, this Odu speaks of the importance of unity, communication, and understanding, especially within family, to avoid situations like this. You know, in this sign, a brother tried to kill another, basically, or, you know, maim him in a way where he could never have a quality of life. So this Odu says we have to be very careful with envious people because unfortunately nowadays it seems like that's what's most, you know, probable. That's what's most popular. You know, the level of hate that we have for each other as a society now is unmatched, you know, and it really comes down to what I believe is this concept of instant gratification where people feel like they deserve things.
Oh, yeah.
So, for example, if I see somebody else with a Lamborghini, right? And not that I'm a fan of Lamborghini per se, but let's say I just hate that person for having a Lamborghini. I don't want the Lamborghini, but I don't want them to have it even less. So that envy, that energy is far too common because with the influences and things that people see every day online, they're more exposed to materialism and all these different things every day more than ever before. So it just gives more of an opportunity for that. So this Odu speaks of the importance of discretion. Really not revealing how well things are going for you, trying to stay out of the public eye more than necessary, and etc. But it really says you usually only be betrayed by the people you know the most and love the most. Because your enemy can never betray you because he's declared himself an enemy.
Yeah.
You know?
You don't trust them automatically, so
yeah,
how can they betray you?
Exactly. So it's, you know, a snake, it's like DMX said before he died, expect a snake to be a snake and don't be mad when he bites you.
Yeah.
You know, the issue is when you pet the dog and then the dog betrays you. It's like, man, I thought we were cool. You know, so Baba Irosun Meji speaks of that, and really an incredible Meji. It's very powerful. You know, it speaks a lot about the ocean. It speaks a lot about Olokun. You know, there's another pataki here that actually can be found in the shell as well. This is debatable, but this story can be used in Ifa, just like in the Erindilogung. It's one of the very few stories that's interchangeable between both. Because I read a paper on it years ago, and I always found that interesting. But in this sign, it says that the client knows more than the bawalao, or the client knows more than the person. So what occurred was 𝗀𝗲𝗍𝗏 visited a land, and he had a big reputation, and the king was a little worried that 𝗀𝗲𝗍𝗏 was going to be able to start a revolution against him. So 𝗀𝗲𝗍𝗏 was invited to the palace to be able to attend to the king personally, even though it wasn't his custom. He would usually attend to people at home. But, you know, kind of trying to go with the flow and not insult, he went and fell into taboo. When he did the divination, it came out that the king had to do a head rogation, right, with a fish, which 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗁 did perfectly. And 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗁 left near, the icons and things of the palace. And 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗁 was invited to stay the night, which once again was a huge taboo for him and somebody with this sign. And he did. And the next morning, the regal chain was missing, right? And this was a really big issue because now, the one person that was going to be blamed was 𝗃𝗏𝗁 himself being the visitor. So the king said, you have 3 days to make my chain show up or you're going to be executed, which was all part of his plan anyway. So 𝗃𝗏𝗁 did divination. Baba Irosun Meji was revealed, where Ifa said he needed to perform sacrifice with a fish himself. What he did not realize is that the king had thrown the chain in the ocean as a way to have an excuse to kill 𝗃𝗏𝗁, because he's like, I'll buy another one after he's dead. So when 𝗃𝗏𝗁 fished out the fish to be able to perform the head rogation, when he ripped it open, he found the chain inside because Olokun had put it there for him. So when he came with his head rogated and he gave the chain back, the king was so terrified by him that he basically abdicated the throne and 𝗃𝗏𝗁 stayed king. So it's kind of a reminder that if we're trying to hurt other people, we don't realize that the same thing that's motivating us to do that, we could fall into that anyway, just by trying to hurt somebody else. The king would have stayed king if he would have had some self-confidence and knew how to interact with 𝗃𝗏𝗁 as a gentleman. But the envy was too much. He couldn't deal with the anxiety of 𝗃𝗏𝗁 being more popular than him or more powerful than him. So he literally constructed and concocted his own destruction. So this Odu speaks of the importance of self-confidence, not having envy. Rather than that, allowing other people's progress to spur positive motivation within ourselves. And that's really what it should be as a society and as a citizen, because, we see so many things and exposed to so many things on a daily basis. We should be inspired by them, rather than inspired to hurt or, be envious, which leads to really negative things. So that's Baba Irosun Meji, Phil.
That was one of my favorite ones.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a lot of lessons, man. It's a very profound Odu, especially if you look at the concept of Olokun, where no one knows what's at the bottom of the ocean. It makes reference to we never really know what we're going through or what each other is going through. That's why we have to be kind to each other. Pick up the phone for somebody. If you notice something weird, talk to somebody. We always have to help each other, man. We always have to be available to each other because we could lose somebody special, over this level of occupancy that we have as a society. We don't even have time to blink, but always be there for your fellow man, especially if they're trying to be there for themselves.
Yeah, and especially the people who...
Oh, yeah, my members.
Want to show love to you.
That was good, Phil. 10 points.
We got to... Come on, I'm from radio. I'm the king of
the segue.
All right, guys, we want to state that, hey, you can join our membership program that gives you access to several different tiers, each offering its own different perks. Gives you extra access. You get shows, early releases, and member-only videos. So today, I'm just going to give love to the VIPs.
I love it.
Just the VIPs.
The VIPs.
So shout out to the Anomaly.
Oh, man, that's a runner.
Yeah, shout out to Alyssa Statler.
Very nice. Thank you, Alyssa.
Shout out to Amanda Justine.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out to Alex Crespo.
Okay, yeah. Godson to be, yeah.
Shout out to AM Gonzo.
Oh, my hala. Blessings.
Shout out to Yoga Rudy.
Okay, yeah. We love yoga.
Shout out to Lisa Hernandez.
Thank you.
Shout out to Mel.
Okay, yeah. OG.
And it's Miss Chambers.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, guys, short and sweet today.
No, it wasn't. It was long.
Hit that. No, I'm talking about this outro.
Oh.
Hit that like button, subscribe button. Let somebody know about the membership program. You're the best part of us. To all you guys, a big thank you for everyone here at Our Roots Podcast. And until next time, see the light.